Welcome everybody in the lecture hall. Welcome everybody on Zoom. Welcome to the growing number of people who is watching us on YouTube, probably binge watching for the exam. So today is one of the most exciting parts of the lecture because we are finally getting to go to how to process data. But before we do that, I would like to finish what I started on data models a couple of weeks ago. I hope you had some good time to rest with the Easter holidays. So if I recap what we've done, we've looked at syntax, which can be XML, JSON, and we've seen that it's actually trees. It's a denormalized form of the tables because we can have heterogeneity. We can have in different documents within the same collection, we might have keys associated with different types, so it's heterogeneous. We can have missing values, we can have extra values, we can have nestedness, objects in arrays, so it's a way to obtain nested tables. And then we saw that we can force a structure on the documents with schemas, and if we have a schema, we can say that key must always be associated with a value that is an integer, for example, or we can say that in XML, this element can only have this element children, and so on. So a schema can be used to validate documents, to say yes or no, is it valid according to the schema. And after validation, we can also annotate the document. And by annotating, we mean that in the computer memory, once we have parsed the documents, of course, it's no longer going to be JSON text or XML text, it's a tree in memory. And after validation, we use much more efficient memory formats. If we know that a value is always an integer, then we are, of course, not going to put the digits in memory. We are going to use a 32-bit or 64-bit representation of that integer. The same for dates and so on. Then we saw that often when you validate a JSON or XML document, you don't just validate one, you validate millions of them, billions of them, because they are part of a collection, and you would like at some point to enforce that an entire collection with billions of documents has a consistent schema, that it's all valid against the same schema. And we saw that if the schema satisfies specific properties, so just a few requirements, for example, there shouldn't be any recursion in the schema, all your object types must be closed, meaning that you should not have any object type that accepts unknown keys. You should really make sure that it's closed. And you don't use any abstract types, meaning that every time you constrain a tab for every key, it must be very specific. That has to be an integer, that has to be a string, that has to be an array of floats, and so on. You cannot just say that value must be either an integer or a Boolean. That doesn't work. It has to be a specific type. Under these particular conditions, a collection of valid JSON documents against a schema that satisfies these properties is going to be, in fact, storable as a data frame in the memory of the machine. And that is super efficient. One of the reasons it's super efficient is that if you look at the original JSON, for example, you repeat the keys in every object. But in the memory, you're not going to store it like this. You're going to store it like this. This is a data frame. So it means that in the memory, you only store the keys once, just like in a relational table. Here, you use an efficient integer representation because it's always an integer, a string and a string. But the same goes if we have, in that case, nestedness. We can still use efficient memory representation, even though here we have name within people, living within people, and so on. So you see that with data frames, we can have flat data sets, but we can also have nested data sets, and still we are able to store it like a data frame. So it looks like a table, but it's a bit less structured than a table because there's nestedness. Then we saw that we can have homogeneous data sets and heterogeneous data sets. Of course, if you have a heterogeneous data set, probably you did not validate anything, right? The heterogeneity typically happens if you did not validate or you don't have a single schema against which they're all valid. But it's possible. But in that case, you wouldn't use a data frame. You would probably use more flexible, for example, binary formats and so on. By the way, even if you have a variant type, physically in the end, you end up with binary formats in memory. And I think I'm frozen on Zoom. Am I frozen on Zoom? I'm frozen on Zoom. Okay. Yeah. So That's good because it slows me down. That way I cannot speak too fast. So I think if I correctly recollect, when I am frozen on Zoom, I need to switch that off and on. No, that wasn't enough. So let me switch off the streaming software and reopen it. And usually that does the trick. Let's see. And I'm going to reshare this. Is that working now on Zoom? I am back. I am back. Very good. So, yeah. So I was saying that nestedness, we can do it with data frames, but heterogeneity, you would need to use variant types, and variant types are not as efficient, right? You end up with binary data in the memory, and that takes, again, more room. Oh, yeah, I need to also project in the lecture hall, because there's also a window that I need to put in there. Very good. Well, the screen didn't change, so I was still pointing at the same thing. Okay. Now you can have both. So you can have flat homogeneous data sets or nested heterogeneous data sets. And again, I repeat, that wouldn't be a data frame anymore because of heterogeneity. That would totally be a data frame. In fact, it's even a relational table. But what I want to show you is that once you have validated, annotated, and you have a data frame in memory, you can store it back in a different format. Originally, you might have the data downloaded from the internet as JSON or XML, but there's many, many other formats out there. I'm going to focus on Parquet. Protocol buffers is Google's efficient format for storing that kind of data, so it's also known as protobuf. Whoever heard of protocol buffers? Protobuf? None of you, right? It's just Google's approach. Parquet is open source, so I'm going to more focus on Parquet. CSV, you know already, of course. Avro is a bit, it's just a different approach to Parquet. Data frames, you already know, it's not a format, it's just the layout in the memory. YAML, yet another markup language, could also be a format, but again, not very efficient. And so the idea, and that's a very good habit that I recommend if you have projects in the future, if you have a semester project, a master thesis, and you downloaded terabytes of JSON data, and that JSON is valid, and you can validate it and annotate it, then do not query it as a JSON file. What you should do, once you have validated and annotated, you store it back to the data lake as Parquet. So the idea is that on the right, you remember that PSVI is post-schema validation info set. It's just the tree that you built in memory after the validation and the annotation. You're going to write it back to the data lake, to S3, to HDFS, as a binary file, known as Parquet, or other formats, directly. And the benefit you get from that is that that file is going to be very small compared to the original JSON data sets. The reason it's going to be smaller is that the file is basically based on this memory representation. You basically store them column by column, like this. This is how Parquet works. That's actually why it's called Parquet. By the way, it's just a pun on that. It stores column by column. And so you got rid of the JSON format when you did that, right? You don't have any JSON anymore. It's just a data frame stored as a binary file on disk, takes less space, and that means that when you read it back to query it, it's going to be much quicker because there are less bits. For example, instead of a terabyte, you're going to have just 100 gigabytes to read because it's smaller, right? Who understands this? Who doesn't understand this? Who understands this? I don't see any raise hand. Maybe it's just the morning, 8 a.m. Maybe on Zoom, who understands this? Who is following? Very good, very good. So that's a very practical tip. If you have a huge collection of JSON documents that you downloaded from the internet, validate it, store it as Parquet, and you will see how much faster things are going to become. And we'll see that with MapReduce. All right. So there's different formats. Some of them, it's just a recap what I'm showing you. There's nothing new in there. Some formats allow for nestedness. JSON, for example, allows for nestedness. CSV does not. You remember that in CSV, it's all flat. Then some formats are textual. JSON, XML, YAML, it's all text. You can open it in a text editor. Other formats like Parquet are binary. If you try to open the Parquet file in a text editor, that's not going to work. It's highly optimized, and binary just contains a serialized data frame, 2 bits. Then some formats require a schema. That's the case of Parquet. You cannot store a Parquet file if you don't have a schema. You need a schema for Parquet. That's the reason why it's so efficient and compact. Some other formats have an optional schema. That's the case of XML, JSON, CSV. You don't have any schema in there. It's just text. All right? So this is the idea. And now I want to show you one of the benefits of, that you got from the restaurant menu that I presented to you last week. I showed you all the data types that you have in many technologies. What I want to show you here is it's an excerpt from the Parquet documentation. If you go to the Parquet documentation and look at some of the types that they have, what you notice is that the names might be strange or it's the first time you see them, right? In32 and so on. But if you think of it, we've already seen them, just under different names. It's just like Auschwitzer Deutsch or Basel Deutsch or Zurich Deutsch or Walliser Deutsch, right? You recognize that Boolean we've already seen. These are numbers, these are integers, this is double, so that's basically the double and float things. You have decimals with arbitrary precision and scale, so we've seen that. You have strings, so you can store it in the UTF-8 format. They called it UTF-8 even. Enum is just a restricted choice of strings. For example, I don't know, the 26 cantons in Switzerland, that might be an enum on 26 strings. You have binary formats, you have dates, and so on. So what I want to show you with that slide is not to give you something else to learn by heart. What I want to show you is that if you look at the Parquet documentation, it's going to be a walk in the park for you, because you're going to see it just corresponds, like many technologies, to the same idea. You have the same kind of types in there. The same goes for the structured types. You're going to see there's lists and there's maps. So that's different names, yes, but who cares? It's what we've already seen. A list is just an array, just like a JSON array, and a map is just a JSON object, right? That's it. So don't focus on the names, just focus on the fact that it's always going to be the same sorts of types that you see in any technology. You can do the same with Avro, with protocol buffers, you will see it's always the same. That's, by the way, a protocol buffer example. That's a schema. It's not JSON or XML because protocol buffers is purely binary. So you don't have this JSON schema or XML schema thing in the same syntax. So it's just a special syntax that they came up with. And you can see here you have a structure. It's basically an object called person. Last name is required. First name can repeat. So it's a bit like in XML where you can repeat elements. Title is optional. Boss is optional. And you see that title and boss are nested. Title and persons are further object types. Just an example. That's what protocol buffers would look like. So again, if I summarize, in a raw form, if you just store your collection as JSON or XML or YAML, it's going to be heterogeneous, but it's going to take a lot of space because it's just text, so it's not very efficient. But the moment you validate it and annotate it and then save it back in a binary format with a schema, then the collection now is homogeneous, can be nested, but it's homogeneous. And the space you need on the disk is much smaller, and it's much more efficient to process with MapReduce, with Spark, and so on. Okay? So I think I've already said it. Use Parquet, do not use JSON in order to query. The first thing you should do is to convert your JSON collection to a Parquet file if you want to query it on the data lake. I think you will have exercises on that. Okay, so here I just want to make sure that, that you've followed what I've been telling you. So you have the code in here. Because I'm done with data models. I'm going to go to MapReduce now. Everything, very good. We have a majority at 80%. Okay. Maybe there's also an Easter holiday effect on the fact that things might not be completely fresh in your minds. All right, so I recommend you read the textbook. I recommend you do the exercises, and you should really download Oxygen. You should really try to write schemas, JSON schema, XML schema, push the buttons to check for well-formedness and validation, and get acquainted with this. And try as an exercise to take, for example, the Great Language Game or a JSON data set, try to validate it with RumbleDB and store it back as Parquet. That's a good practical exercise. Very good. So I'm going to stop the recording here.